My son-in-law was getting a party ready for me when my wife whispered, "Grab your bag, we're leaving now. Act like nothing's wrong." I thought she was joking until she locked the car doors and said, "Something's very, very wrong. Look at this." What she showed me was evidence I never expected. My son-in-law wanted to harm me, and he almost succeeded. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to know, where are you watching this from? Comment your city below. Your support helps this story reach others who need this warning, and if you've ever felt something was wrong but couldn't prove it, you're not alone. My name is Ron Hayes. I'm 58 years old, and this is my story. Now, let me take you back to that night. The ballroom looked perfect. Golden balloons, white lilies everywhere, a banner reading, "Congratulations, Ron Hayes, 35 years of excellence." My son-in-law Tim had outdone himself. At 58, after building Hayes Development Group to $12.8 million, this should have been one of the proudest nights of my life. I stood near the bar, surrounded by 150 guests, colleagues, old friends, neighbors from our Gold Coast building. They all wanted to shake my hand, tell me they'd miss me at the office. The retirement party felt surreal. After 3.5 decades of pouring everything into this company, tonight was supposed to be my victory lap. "Dad, you doing okay?" Tim appeared beside me, his hand on my shoulder. At 36, he looked confident in his Navy suit, every inch the successful businessman. "You look pale." Truth was, I felt dizzy. The room had tilted moments ago, and I'd gripped the bar rail to steady myself. These episodes were becoming more frequent. "Just tired, son. Long week wrapping things up." "You've been saying that a lot lately." He frowned, genuine concern creasing his features. "Maybe you should sit down for a minute." "I'm fine." I squeezed his arm gratefully. Tim had been so attentive lately, checking on me constantly. "Thanks for organizing all this. It means everything." "Anything for you, Dad. You've earned this retirement. Time to enjoy life." I'd been having these spells for months now. Fatigue that hit like a truck, dizziness that came out of nowhere, memory lapses that Patty diplomatically called senior moments, though I caught the worry flickering in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. Tim had been especially concerned about my health, making sure I took my vitamins every morning without fail. "Health is wealth, Dad," he'd say, handing me the bottle with that caring smile. Good son-in-law, attentive son-in-law. Or so I thought. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, celebrating 35 years of building something from nothing, and my body seemed to be giving out just when I should be enjoying the fruits of my labor. I'd started Hayes Development with nothing but a pickup truck and a dream. Now, we owned prime real estate across Chicago, employed 47 people, and had a portfolio that any developer would envy. Across the room, Patty stood rigid near the entrance, her cream dress elegant against the ballroom's warm lighting. But her face was drawn, shoulders tense. She'd been quiet all evening, moving through conversations like she was somewhere else entirely. I'd asked twice if something was wrong. Both times she'd forced a smile and said she was fine. But 38 years of marriage taught me when my wife was lying. She caught my eye across the crowded room. Even with 30 feet and 100 people between us, I could see it clearly. Fear. Raw, undiluted terror. That's when everything changed. Patty moved through the crowd like a woman on a mission, her elegant dress swishing as she navigated between clusters of guests offering congratulations and well wishes. She reached me and leaned close, her breath warm against my ear. "We need to leave." Her voice shook in a way I'd never heard before. "Right now. Don't ask questions, just trust me." I pulled back to search her face. Her hand gripped mine with painful intensity, her knuckles white with tension. "Patty, what's wrong?" "Now, Ron, please." The desperation in her voice cut through the ambient noise of the party like a knife. In 4 decades together, through business failures and successes, through her father's death and my mother's long illness, through every crisis that had tested us, I'd never heard that tone. Pure, unadulterated fear. I set my whiskey glass down on the nearest table, the amber liquid catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. We made hurried excuses to nearby guests, sudden onset of that persistent headache, forgotten important phone call we needed to make. Tim materialized beside us, his expression shifting from celebration to concern. "Dad, what's wrong? You look terrible." Just one of my headaches, I managed, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. Need to head home. Tim's face fell with disappointment. Are you sure? We haven't even done the toast yet. Everyone's been looking forward to hearing your speech. I know, son. I'm sorry. Rain check? Of course. He pulled me into a hug, his arms strong around my shoulders. Feel better, Dad? We'll celebrate properly soon. The drive to our penthouse was silent, except for Patty's ragged breathing. She drove faster than usual, knuckles white as she gripped the steering wheel. Questions burned in my throat, but her rigid posture and the set of her jaw told me to wait. Whatever was happening, whatever had spooked her so badly, she needed to tell me in her own time, in her own way. We pulled into the underground garage of our building, the familiar concrete walls suddenly feeling oppressive. Patty killed the engine, but didn't move. Her hands remained on the steering wheel, trembling slightly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tablet. Tim's tablet. Read this. Her voice broke like ice cracking. All of it. The screen showed a messaging app I didn't recognize. Tim's messages. My eyes found the first one from someone named Kevin Marshall, and I read it once, then again. The words made no sense. The compound is ready. It'll be in his drink tonight. 10 minutes after he drinks it, his heart will stop. He has a history of heart problems. No one will suspect a thing. My vision blurred. The tablet shook in my hands like a leaf in a storm. Keep reading, Patty whispered, her voice barely audible. I scrolled through message after message, dates going back months. Details about dosages, about timing, about symptoms that would look natural for a man my age. About vitamins laced with poison. About making everything appear like natural causes. About me, my son-in-law, the man I'd welcomed into my family with open arms, who I'd loved and trusted like my own flesh and blood, had been planning to kill me. The next message confirmed my worst fears. Perfect. 6 months of careful preparation. Tonight, we finish what we started. Your father-in-law won't suffer. Quick, clean, untraceable, and then all that money becomes yours. I couldn't breathe. The garage walls pressed in around me like a tomb. My chest felt tight. Whether from the poison or the shock, I couldn't tell. Ron? Patty's hand covered mine, warm against my cold fingers. I found these messages 3 days ago. I've been trying to figure out what to do, how to tell you. But tonight was supposed to be... She couldn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Tonight was supposed to be my last night alive. We made it upstairs somehow. I don't remember the elevator ride. Don't remember walking through our front door. The penthouse that had been our sanctuary for 15 years felt foreign, like someone else's home. Patty guided me to our living room couch, but I couldn't sit. Couldn't stop pacing across the Persian rug we'd bought to celebrate our 20th anniversary. This has to be a mistake. The tablet shook in my hand as I held it up. Someone hacked his phone. Someone's playing a sick joke. Ron, no. I turned to face her, hoping to see agreement, hoping to see doubt. Instead, I saw certainty etched in the lines around her eyes. Tim wouldn't do this. He's family, Patty. He married our daughter. He calls me Dad. Tears streamed down her face, carving tracks through her carefully applied makeup. You think I wanted to believe it? You think I haven't spent the last 3 days praying I was wrong, looking for any other explanation? 3 days? The words hit me like a physical blow. You've known for 3 days? How do you tell your husband that his son-in-law is trying to murder him? Her voice rose, then broke completely. How do you say those words out loud? Murder. The word hung in our living room like toxic gas, poisoning everything it touched. Read the rest, she said, gesturing at the tablet. Read all of it. I scrolled through months of messages, 6 months of planning, 6 months of Tim discussing dosages with Kevin Marshall, who I now learned was Tim's brother-in-law, a chemist with access to controlled substances. 6 months of careful questions about symptoms, about making everything look like natural causes for a 58-year-old man with a stressful career. One message from 4 months ago stopped me cold. Tim, he's getting noticeably weaker. The fatigue is becoming obvious. How much longer can we stretch this out? 2 more months of the current dose, then we increase for the final push. Slow poisoning is an art form. Too fast and someone gets suspicious. Too slow and he might recover. I barely made it to the bathroom before I vomited. When I returned, Patty sat with her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I collapsed beside her on the couch where we'd shared so many happy moments. "Tell me exactly how you found these messages." She took a shaking breath. "Wednesday morning, 3 days ago. Tim called and said I could pick up his tablet from their apartment. He'd left it here last week after dinner and forgotten about it." I nodded, feeling numb. "I went to their place in Lincoln Park. Tim was at his gym, Jen was in the shower. The tablet was sitting on their kitchen counter, screen lit up with notifications. A message popped up from Kevin about the compound being ready for tonight." Her voice cracked like breaking glass. "Ron, I stood in their kitchen reading how they were going to kill you, how they'd been systematically poisoning you for months, how tonight would be the final dose that would stop your heart, and everyone would think it was just natural causes for a man your age with business stress." The realization crashed over me like a cold wave. My vitamins. The daily routine Tim had started. Patty nodded, reading my expression. "Every morning for 6 months. Tim began that health routine, remember? Said you needed to take better care of yourself for retirement. Health is wealth, Dad." I could hear his voice in my memory, see his caring smile as he handed me that bottle. Each morning, my son-in-law had been killing me with kindness. "I took photos with my phone," Patty continued, her voice steadier now, but still fragile. "Every message, every detail, then I left before Jen came out of the bathroom. I drove home and sat in this very spot, staring at the evidence on my phone, not knowing what to do next. Why didn't you call the police immediately? And tell them what? That I illegally accessed my son-in-law's private device? Any lawyer would get those messages thrown out of court. Besides," she paused, wiping her eyes, "what if I was wrong? What if there was somehow an innocent explanation? For 6 months of messages about poisoning me? I know how it sounds, but Ron, he's family. He's married to our daughter. I kept hoping there was something I wasn't understanding, some context I was missing." I pulled her close, and we sat together on the same couch where we'd celebrated Jen's college graduation, where we'd toasted her engagement to Tim, where apparently my son-in-law had been planning my death while sharing family dinners. "We go to the hospital tomorrow," Patty said, her voice gaining strength. "First thing in the morning. Blood work. We need proof, real medical evidence." "Patty!" "No arguments, Ron. If I'm wrong about this, I'll spend the rest of my life apologizing. But if I'm right," her eyes met mine, and I saw steel beneath the tears. "If I'm right, our son-in-law has been systematically murdering you for 6 months." I wanted to argue, wanted to defend Tim, wanted desperately to believe there was some other explanation. But deep in my gut, where instinct lives, I knew she was right. "Okay," I whispered. "Tomorrow, first thing." Outside our windows, Chicago glittered in the night. Somewhere in that maze of lights, Tim was probably wondering why we'd left his perfectly planned party early. Somewhere out there, my son-in-law was waiting for news of my death. Northwestern Memorial Hospital's waiting room smelled like antiseptic and anxiety. Patty and I had been sitting in those uncomfortable plastic chairs for 3 hours, her hand gripping mine like a lifeline. I kept thinking about those messages, about 6 months of Tim slipping poison into vitamins while telling me he cared about my health. "Mr. Hayes." A nurse appeared, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Collins will see you now." Dr. Collins was maybe 50, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had delivered too much bad news over the years. He gestured for us to sit, but Patty remained standing, arms crossed defensively. "Mr. Hayes," he began, his tone making my stomach drop before he even continued. "I've reviewed your blood work multiple times. I've even sent samples to 2 different independent labs to confirm the results." He paused, studying our faces. "You have significantly elevated levels of a potassium-based compound in your system, dangerously elevated. What exactly does that mean?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "It means someone has been poisoning you systematically over an extended period, slowly and methodically." He pulled up results on his computer screen. "Based on the accumulation patterns and metabolic markers, I'd estimate approximately 6 months of consistent exposure." 6 months? The timeline matched the messages perfectly. "How serious is his condition?" Patty's voice trembled despite her attempt to sound clinical. Dr. Collins turned to face us both directly. Mrs. Hayes, at current toxin levels, your husband has perhaps 1 to 2 weeks before the compound triggers fatal cardiac arrhythmia. Whoever did this brought him very close to the edge. The room spun around me. 1 to 2 weeks. Tim hadn't just been planning to kill me, he'd been actively killing me for half a year, watching me grow weaker, probably calculating exactly when my heart would finally give out. "Can you reverse the damage?" Patty demanded. "We can begin immediate chelation therapy to reduce the toxin levels, but understand that significant damage has already occurred. We'll do everything medically possible, but you need to know that whoever did this came very close to succeeding." "It was our son-in-law," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Tim Reynolds. The vitamins he insisted I take every morning. That's how he did it, isn't it?" Dr. Collins' professional composure cracked slightly, revealing something that looked like horror. "I'm required to report this to law enforcement immediately. This is attempted murder." "We already have evidence," Patty said, her voice harder now than I'd ever heard it. "Text messages proving intent and planning, but we need your medical findings as scientific confirmation. I'll prepare a comprehensive toxicology report for the police." Dr. Collins shook his head grimly. "Mr. Hayes, begin treatment immediately and avoid any contact with the person who did this until they're in custody." In the hospital parking garage, Patty and I sat in stunned silence. Around us, Chicago continued its normal rhythm. Cars honking, people rushing to appointments, the world spinning forward while mine had ground to a complete halt. My son-in-law had poisoned me. Tim had looked me in the eyes every single morning for 6 months and handed me death disguised as vitamins, all while calling me dad and asking about my retirement plans. "What do we do now?" Patty finally asked. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had built Hayes Development from nothing, that had walked my daughter down the aisle 3 years ago, that had welcomed Tim into our family with warmth and trust. They were shaking now. Now I turned to face my wife, and for the first time since reading those messages, I felt something besides shock and betrayal. I felt cold, focused rage. Now we fight back. Tim wanted to kill me for money. I started the car, my hands steadier than they'd been in days. He's about to learn exactly what his father-in-law is capable of when he's fighting for his life. We had maybe 2 weeks. It would have to be enough. Thursday afternoon found us sitting across from Raymond Foster in his downtown Chicago office. The attorney was 65, silver-haired, with the kind of steady presence that comes from handling family crises for 4 decades. His office overlooked Michigan Avenue, the city carrying on below like nothing had changed. "Mr. Hayes," Raymond said, studying printouts of the messages Patty had photographed. "These are absolutely damning from a moral standpoint, but legally, they won't hold up in court." "What do you mean?" Patty leaned forward. "They were obtained without a warrant from Tim's personal device. Any competent defense attorney gets them ruled inadmissible. Your son-in-law walks free. So, we just let him murder Ron?" Bitterness flooded my voice. "Not if we do this correctly." Raymond leaned back in his leather chair. "We need legally obtained evidence. We set a controlled trap." He pressed his intercom. "Send in Paul Henderson." The man who entered looked like he'd stepped out of a detective novel. Maybe 52, solid build, with the kind of alert eyes that missed nothing. "Former Chicago PD detective," Raymond explained. "Now private investigations." "Mr. Hayes," Paul said, opening his laptop with practiced efficiency. "I've been researching your son-in-law since Raymond called. Tim Reynolds has some serious financial problems." Paul pulled up a series of documents on his screen. Gambling debts, significant ones. $850,000 to some very dangerous people in Las Vegas. The kind who don't accept payment plans. I stared at the numbers. Tim's desperation suddenly made horrible sense. "There's more," Paul continued grimly. "Kevin Marshall, Tim's brother-in-law, works at MedChem Laboratories downtown. He has direct access to controlled pharmaceutical compounds. 3 months ago, their inventory logs showed discrepancies in potassium-based substances. Small amounts, nothing that triggered investigation protocols, but more than enough to kill you slowly. If we can prove Kevin supplied the poison," Raymond interjected, "that establishes conspiracy to commit murder. Kevin will flip on Tim to save himself. Guaranteed." Paul closed his laptop. "Here's our strategy. Saturday evening, you invite Tim and Jen to dinner at your home. Your property means we can legally install surveillance equipment. Audio, video, everything. We give Tim the perfect opportunity to finish what he started. What if he suspects something? Patty asked. He won't, Paul replied confidently. You're dying on his timeline, Mr. Hayes. In his mind, you have days left anyway. Why would you suspect your caring son-in-law? Raymond's expression grew serious. Ron, you need to understand something. Once we execute this plan, there's no going back. Tim goes to prison for attempted murder. Your relationship with Jen, your family dynamics, everything changes forever. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about 6 months of Tim handing me poison with a smile. I thought about Jen, my precious daughter, and wondered how much she knew. I thought about the blood test results, 1 to 2 weeks left to live. He stopped being family the moment he decided I was worth more dead than alive. My voice came out steady and cold. We have 6 days to make this work. Let's get started. Friday morning, an unmarked surveillance van pulled into our Gold Coast driveway. Paul's technical team worked with military precision, transforming our home into a sophisticated monitoring station. 8 high-definition cameras, Paul explained, as technicians installed nearly invisible equipment. Living room, dining room, kitchen, study, pinhole lenses, completely undetectable. Audio pickups in the light fixtures and wall outlets. He handed me a small device. This connects directly to monitors in our van. Raymond and I will watch everything in real time. What about medical backup? I asked. Paramedic? Team positioned 2 houses down, Paul pointed out the window. Dr. Collins's emergency colleague standing by with chelation drugs and cardiac equipment. If Tim manages to get poison into your system, we have less than 90 seconds to intervene. By afternoon, our home looked completely normal. Nothing betrayed the cameras or microphones, but I felt their presence constantly. Every familiar room now served a double purpose. Saturday and Sunday became intensive rehearsal time. Patty and I practiced the switch sequence hundreds of times. Me reaching for my whiskey glass, her accidentally knocking it over, substituting an identical clean glass in the confusion. It has to look completely natural, Raymond coached us during one of his visits. Tim is intelligent and paranoid right now. If he suspects any kind of setup, he'll simply leave, and we lose our only chance. By Sunday evening, the motion was muscle memory. We could execute the switch blindfolded. Monday morning, I sat, staring at my phone for 10 minutes before dialing Tim's number. 6 months of, "How are you feeling, Dad?" Texts stared back at me from the screen. 6 months of lies wrapped in concern. He answered on the second ring, voice bright with false cheer. "Dad, how are you feeling today?" "Better, actually." I forced warmth into my voice. "Listen, would you and Jen like to come for dinner Wednesday evening, just the 4 of us? I've been thinking a lot about family lately." Brief silence. I could almost hear him calculating. "Of course, Dad. What time?" 7 p.m., nothing fancy, just family time. "We'll be there. Family is everything, isn't it?" "Yes," I replied, the irony burning in my throat. "Family is everything." I hung up and looked at Patty. Her face was pale but determined. 2 days, she said quietly. 2 days, I agreed. Wednesday evening, my son-in-law would try to kill me one final time. This time, the cameras would be rolling. Wednesday arrived with cruel normalcy. The sun rose over Lake Michigan just like any other day. Chicago went about its business while I prepared to have dinner with my son-in-law, knowing he planned to kill me. Paul called at noon with final confirmations. Equipment operational, medical team briefed and positioned, backup surveillance units in place. We're ready for tonight. "So am I," I replied, though we both knew I was lying. Patty spent the afternoon cooking, real pot roast, real mashed potatoes, green beans with almonds. The familiar smells filled our home with achingly normal aromas, reminders of hundreds of family dinners when I'd believed Tim loved me. By 6:30 p.m., everything was ready. Paul's team waited in their van down the street. The marked whiskey glass sat at my usual place. An identical backup glass waited within Patty's reach, ready for our rehearsed switch. At exactly 7 p.m., the doorbell rang. Tim stood there with Jen, both dressed as if celebrating something special. My son-in-law wore a navy blazer and that confident smile I'd once been proud to see. Jen looked elegant in a black dress, her eyes bright with an anticipation that now chilled me. "Dad!" Tim embraced me warmly. I forced myself not to recoil. "You look so much better than at the party." Some days are good days, I managed. We settled in the living room with wine and careful conversation. Tim asked about my health, my retirement plans, how I was adjusting to the slower pace. Every question felt like a scalpel probing for weakness. "Dad, help me with the drinks," I said, standing. "I've got that 18-year Macallan you love so much." "Absolutely. You know I can't resist good whiskey." In my study, I poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses with hands that remained surprisingly steady. Above us, cameras recorded everything in perfect clarity. Tim stood casually by the window, commenting on the city lights. "I've been thinking about what you said at the party," he said conversationally, "about family being the most important thing." "Everything I built was for family," I replied, setting down the bottle. "Legacy matters." "It absolutely does." Tim's voice carried strange undertones. "I'll be right back. Forgot to wash my hands." I stepped into the hallway, leaving Tim alone with our glasses for exactly 10 seconds. 10 seconds for my son-in-law to make his final choice between right and wrong. When I returned with ice, Tim stood by the window again, hands in his pockets. The glasses sat on my desk exactly where I had left them, innocent amber liquid catching light from my desk lamp. We returned to the dining room, where Patty had arranged everything beautifully. The marked whiskey glass waited at my place setting. Tim raised his glass first. "To family," he said, looking directly into my eyes. "To family," I echoed, bringing the glass halfway to my lips. That's when Patty moved behind me, reaching for the serving platter, her elbow connected perfectly with my arm. The motion we'd practiced hundreds of times, and the glass flew from my hand. Crystal exploded against hardwood flooring. Whiskey splashed across our dining room table, soaking into the white tablecloth. "Oh God, Ron, I'm so clumsy," Patty exclaimed. Tim's face went dead white. His eyes widened with unmistakable horror and fury as he watched 6 months of planning literally spill across our floor. "It's fine," I said, deliberately making my voice weak and shaky. "Actually, I'm not feeling well anyway. My chest feels tight." "Dad!" Tim half rose from his chair. "Should I call 911? No, just need to rest. Maybe we should end the evening early." "But we just got here," Jen protested, her voice tight with disappointment. "Sorry, sweetheart. Maybe next week when I'm feeling stronger." I stood carefully, one hand pressed to my chest for dramatic effect. "Tim, could you see yourselves out? I think I need to lie down." My son-in-law stared at me intently, clearly calculating whether his poison had somehow worked despite the spilled glass. "Of course, Dad. Feel better?" He kissed my cheek, Judas with a smile. 30 minutes later, sirens shattered the quiet of our Gold Coast neighborhood. I stood at our window, watching red and blue lights converge 2 blocks away on Tim's street. My phone buzzed with Paul's text. "Both in custody. Video evidence perfect. It's over." The trial was remarkably swift. The video of Tim adding white powder to my whiskey was damning enough. Kevin Marshall's confession sealed the verdict. Financial records proved motive. Medical testimony confirmed method. Tim received 25 years for attempted murder. Kevin got 8 years for conspiracy. Jen received 3 years suspended sentence after cooperating with prosecutors who believed she'd been manipulated rather than a willing participant. I never attended any court hearings. I didn't need to see Tim's face again. 1 year later, I celebrated my 59th birthday quietly in a lakefront apartment in Evanston. Just Patty, homemade cake, and the sound of waves against the shore. We'd sold everything. The Gold Coast penthouse, Hayes Development Group, all of it. Half the money went to organizations protecting elderly people from financial abuse. The other half funds our simple new life. Tim writes monthly letters from prison. I read them all but never respond. Some wounds don't heal. They just teach you to live differently. Looking back, I see the warning signs I missed. Trust became my vulnerability. Love blinded me to danger. This is my warning to you. Verify the people closest to you, especially when money is involved. The most profound insight I gained isn't about revenge or justice. It's about the fundamental truth that blood relation doesn't guarantee loyalty. But choosing to love someone despite betrayal defines who you truly are. Family isn't about shared DNA. It's about shared values. And sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we trusted, without question.